The Ukrainian Peace Formula and its implementation is the main topic of negotiations in Saudi Arabia this week. High-ranking officials from 30 countries, including the United States, are expected to take part in the meeting in Jeddah. Washington calls these negotiations a chance for the United States to directly hear the Ukrainian side.
We do, of course, support this summit. We have long said that it is important that Ukraine be in the driver's seat when it comes to any potential diplomatic resolution to this war. It's important that countries that have not yet heard directly from Ukraine hear from Ukraine. So we are gratified that there will be countries that will be attending this summit to talk directly with Ukraine.
Washington experts are confident that the meeting in Saudi Arabia by itself will not lead to the end of the Russian war, but it will help make another step towards peace. John Herbst, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine in 2003-2006, draws attention to the fact that historically the countries of the Global South had good relations with Russia. But now there are difficulties in relations, and Putin himself is creating them, including by blocking the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
The Putin summit with African nations last month was actually not such a winner for him, because we've had several nations talking about the need to restore the grain deal. So there's been some slippage in the Global South of support for Putin.
The whole world is watching in real time how Russia fires missiles at the civilian infrastructure of Ukraine and kills civilians. Photos, videos, reports of eyewitnesses are available online. But this may not be enough to convince some developing countries to change their support for the Kremlin or neutrality to condemnation of Russia's war against Ukraine. Melinda Herring, an expert of the U.S. Atlantic Council, believes.
Many of these countries have had deep relationships with Russia, right? Several African countries rely on the Wagner Group for their security services, and this is not new. So the links are denser between Moscow and Kar, for instance, rather than Kar in Ukraine. There's also, Russia has done an amazing job of penetrating Africa's media. So you go almost anywhere in Africa and you can find the Russian perspective on TV. Can you find the Ukrainian perspective? No, you can't. And that's a big problem. So, that's an effort, I think, for the West to step in and make sure there's real access to information throughout the continent. But that's a really big problem. Ukraine has done a really good job trying to increase its exposure and its arguments in the Global South, but it's really hard for these historical relationships, and also just the media penetration issue is quite hard as well.
Analysts with whom we managed to communicate agree that the recognition by the countries of the Global South of at least several points of President Zelensky's peace plan will be considered a victory for Ukraine at the summit in Saudi Arabia. The main focus is on the clause that reads withdrawal of Russian troops and cessation of hostilities. This week, the White House announced that it had begun negotiations with Kyiv on security guarantees to Ukraine before joining NATO.
This is a continuation of the joint statement of support that President Biden made together with President Zelensky and the leaders of the G7 countries in Vilnius. From the commentary of the White House for TV channel Freedom.
This summit in Jeddah is another opportunity for the Ukrainian and American delegation to check the clock on the issue of Ukrainian and global security in the face of Russian aggression and strengthen the world anti-war coalition. Reported by Mike Hoffman from Washington, Pavlo Shtelmach, UATV News.